Good night. Let's try and have one meeting, please. Let's try and have one meeting. I've come a long way. And we are here for... Just pull back that thing. For pretty serious business. Let me say a good night to my political leader, one to whom I have given firm commitment, Dr. the Honorable Godwin Friday, my parliamentary colleague, Honorable Baptise, soon to be parliamentarian, cutting them loose, Bruce, and sometimes Santa Bruce. My leader warned me not to go ahead of him. You know, when St. Vincent was in the heat of its, what I consider to be the closest I ever saw our country come to, someone help, the technician, just help me with the microphone, please. Closest that we ever came to what I call civil war, when we were in Grenada for what became the Grand, you need to pull it back a bit from me too as well. The Grand Beach Accord. It's when I got to know and respect Israel very much. He was then with the National Youth Council. I'm departed from my script. And I was there with the Employers Federation as the president. And he had come under tremendous pressure. Tremendous pressure. From Ralph Gonzalez, Kenny Anthony, and Denzel Douglas, it would have been, from St. Kitts. Those three prime ministers who were resolute in the determination to bring the New Democratic Party down. And literally speaking, along with Sir James Mitchell, only Israel and myself were there, albeit independent persons, when the Grand Beach Accord was signed. And from that time, I knew and understood the measure of the young man. Well, younger than he is now. He's still young, but getting not so young. And today, I was saying to one of his constituents last evening, and KU too, but it is less important for me to win my seat in Central Kingstown this time around, and more important to see that Bruce and Kay get into the parliament, because once they're in, we're in government. Because obviously, in other words, we're Central Kingstown. Come election day, we are Rolls Royce. Bam, bam, bam. Bam, bam, bam. You know, well, they still try to thief me, but the other thief by about 1,000 to stop me from winning by 1,000. Brothers and sisters, executive members of Spoonie, I have a prepared script for this evening's presentation, and I haven't hailed up the wonderful people of Central Kingstown. How remiss of me. My colleague, Vice President Patel, likes to say he has the most beautiful part of the country. And by now, nobody challenges him. I accept that too. In the same way that he accepts that I have the most beautiful people. So, fair exchange. I've said that from here on in all presentations I do for the New Democratic Party, for myself and the constituency, I caption them giving thanks. Because as has been said before, I've been around for a little while. And I am now in what I call my wisdom years in politics. I function pretty much as an elder statesman in the New Democratic Party. And it is for me to do all that's in my powers to lend support of those who are coming on and those who are already there, and to ensure that we have a significant victory in the upcoming elections. And that brings me to the meeting and the session we had last evening, the sip and chat meeting. I found that virtually everyone in the diaspora who spoke to me last evening wanted an assurance we will win the next general election. That's the message that came to me over and over again. And they didn't want a halfway answer. They wanted a decisive, convincing answer. that we would win the next election. And I'm giving them that assurance. In the same way, in the presence of my president, he would tell you that in the party, I am one of the hardest markers. So I'm not necessarily the most loved in the hierarchy of the party, but it doesn't matter to me. What is important to me is that we win government, because I take no prisoners. And if you are there as a candidate and you're not doing your work and doing it hard enough, I'll tell you so. Straight up. Straight up. So that's who I am. So, I mentioned that because it wanted me to change from what I prepared to speak to you about, but I believe I can do both. I can chew and talk at the same time, and I know exactly where I'm going to start this evening. Many years ago, about 15 years ago, when I had disrupted my doctoral studies, and when I used to go down to WFM radio station to do a radio program, I recall one evening I wanted to do a very sharp turn coming across the Brewery Road to go into WFM to do a radio program. And to do that, one has to swing wide on the right-hand side of the road to make that very sharp 160-degree turn to get into WFM. And I pulled all the way over on the right side to make that sharp turn, and when I looked, a car appeared to be parked just in the road to prevent me from completing this 160-degree turn. And I'm blowing my horn, and I'm trying to get the attention of the driver, and the person with whom you're in conversation to move, to let me in. And he wouldn't move. And obviously I got a little infuriated. And then he said to me, "Look, Leacock, come man, you can make it, come." And I'm saying to myself, "But you had to be a crazy man. He in the middle of the road and telling me, come where?" And when he insisted that I come, I said, "You know what? Let me just follow his instructions and make the turn." And so said, so done. I was able to turn and get into this place without him moving his car. But at that stage of my life, we were into a phase what we call action learning, learning from our daily experiences. And I recall the lesson that I noted, and it's still my practice today. Very often in life, in order to solve a problem or to find the appropriate solution to a problem, you have to give up the angle from which you look at the problem and accept another person's angle of looking at the problem. I want you to reflect and think what I'm saying. Give up your angle of looking at the problem and accept another person's angle of looking at the same problem. And that also means you have to be able to recognize that you can get nowhere in life if you are not prepared to put trust in others to solve your own problem. This great institution of a party, the New Democratic Party, under the continued capable and able leadership of today, Dr. Friday, continues to put trust in the people whom we want to serve and to look at the problems of St. Vincent and the Grenadines through their eyes. And for that, we are getting closer and closer to 2020 vision. And with God's help, we'll solve the nation's problems. So, I said to you, my brothers and sisters here this evening, imagine your 150 square miles St. Vincent and the Grenadines. It doesn't need rocket science to come to grips with the reality that a 150 square mile island with a 100,000 population cannot, looking internally, solve all of its problems. It cannot generate the economic activity on a domestic economy that can satisfy the needs of all of its people. And for that reason, as we have always been historically, we must be and outward-looking people. And it begins with the embrace of you and the diaspora, because you automatically enlarge the economic frontiers of the New Democratic Party of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and make what oftentimes appears to be impossible the possible. And so that context is critical for us going forward. St. Vincent and the Grenadines needs you in the diaspora now more than ever. And collectively, with your support, we will deliver the better St. Vincent and the Grenadines to which we are all committed. So, picture in redemption shops, the unemployed mother and household growing passion fruit on vines, and the vehicle comes along weekly and takes all the passion fruit to process and make tea bags and passion fruit drink. And that household no longer has to ask the shopkeeper to break a bag of bread for $2, which contains 5, so they could only pay for 3, that they can have a dinner, or to buy a juicy, or in other parts of the constituency, because I call it as it is, to live one day at a time, a tea bag today and hope for a tea bag tomorrow. That's not the St. Vincent of our grandparents worked hard to develop. Imagine a St. Vincent and the Grenadines in which we could have households upon households growing soursop, which is good for medicinal purposes, for the same tea bags, for the food content, for the beverage content, creating opportunities for the many mouths that now cannot be fed to feed themselves. Creating a job does not mean having a person leave his or her physical dwelling and go into an establishment. It means having that person immediate access to the resources that can generate income. So the person who rings the little piece of land with coconut trees and gathers the dry coconut to get the cream and the milk and can sell that to the ice cream parlor, and the ice cream parlor can do it in large amount to sell to Ben and Haz and Daz and all the ice cream flavors, we are creating income. And you know that more than me, because since I've been here, I had the privilege with one of my 3 grandchildren in Brooklyn to go to an organic store. And I'm sure ever so often you hang your head in shame and disbelief when you see the things that are being sold here in New York and are lying a waste in St. Vincent and the Grenadines that can turn our society around. We have to do much more and much better at picking from the low-hanging branches. We are doing it. And we are stuck in a way that is resolute and determined that once this regime is in office, this one will graze and that other one starve. You can't build a society that way. And today we are in St. Vincent, having sown bitter seeds, are reaping an even worse harvest. This morning, as you know by now, and people are numbed in St. Vincent. They don't even bother anymore. In fact, it's a joke. What, nobody in that today? That's what we say in St. Vincent. But I know they had 4 shooting and 1 dead. But that was this morning, so I hold my breath because by tonight it might change. When you have a country, when you are in a country that a person could be brave enough to say, boy, I will rob that policeman there. I mean, I grew up in an age when if you made trouble, the parents told you to bring the police to lock you up. Now a man watching the police and saying I can rob he. And the head of government says we don't have a problem. But I didn't come here this evening to talk about that. Oh, I didn't speak about something else. I'll speak about something else much more deep than that and fundamental to that. And I'll get right back to why we are in this mess of crime and violence. Because, I hear things, and it upsets me sometimes, It upsets me right here in Brooklyn, international community. The Ralph them have a stronger hold in Brooklyn. This is an international place. No self-respecting person shall ever allow that to be said. He can't come in to Central Kingston and listen to it. How can he do it in Brooklyn? He's listening, and I ain't making this up. I was at a funeral in the Methodist Church in the heat of election, and they told me that Ralph in Sharps, and I said, you have to come out. And I go, and I park, and I walk him out. And if he do it again, I will do it again. Because I cannot go to South Rivers and Connery and tell him how to run business. My sister from Lagos, that's how I represent you. Firm and assertive. Tonight, I want to establish that when I speak, and when I speak for the New Democratic Party, that we are what I call an evidence-based party. And really, if it was within my powers, I would exchange those of you who are here tonight for a similar large number of ULP supporters, because I'm speaking to the converted. And they really need to get the message. Well, I don't believe stick breaking is, but I really want it to get home to them. So I'm not going to speak to a Friday saying, Baptise saying, and the colleagues say. I'm speaking to what the Director of Audits says and said. Nelson King, the distinguished journalist, recorded this before, but I have to repeat it for emphasis. My colleague senator spoke about the audit reports. I go back to the 2004 and 2005. I'll tell you why I'm doing it, because things haven't changed. It has got worse. In 2004 and 5 report, and this is what we're not paying attention to. This is the message that has to go home. This is what the Director of Audit said at the time, 14 years ago. Over the last 6 years, that is since the ULP come into office, the actual outturn of capital revenue has shown that financing for capital works was not always forthcoming. In other words, the government telling lie. This means that adequate funds were not raised to finance and execute a number of projects included in the capital budget for the financial years. That is, you're promising things that you can't do. Way back then said that, But he went on to say, the government should consider reviewing the total estimates for capital expenditure, since these large shortfalls in capital revenue have implications for the credibility of the capital budget. In other words, if you keep telling lies, so people will not be able to believe you. You are misleading and fooling the people. And regrettably, there is a significant number of people who are getting right up to the cliff, saving except for jumping off. We have to save them and save them from themselves. My brothers and sisters, I'm walking through. Sister Kay spoke to the question of accountability. In the 2008 report, I'm reminding you, this is all I'm doing, because they're listening. But the truth will speak for itself. The Auditor General, or the Director of Audit, said, because of the significance of matters described above, I have not been able to obtain sufficient appropriate evidence to provide a basis for an audit opinion. Accordingly, I do not express an opinion on the financial statements. For an auditor to audit the records, she has or he to depend on the statements prepared by the Accountant General. The auditor says that what has been prepared and submitted are not dependable upon which I can offer an opinion. That's an irresponsible government that is functioning and misleading too significant a portion of our people that we have a well-run and well-managed country. I'm telling you, and I've said it repeatedly in budget presentations. If St. Vincent was a private company, Ralph and Company would have been fired a long, long time ago. Long, long time ago. In fact, just to fast track and support a point that my colleague made, I was appalled that I can sit into a parliament and receive an estimate, the official document of the parliament, and it had to wait until the IMF came a month or two after and ask the question, why was $112 million owed to Venezuela left out of the budget? The government had to come back and correct that error. The point I'm making is that even our professionals are so paralyzed that they are prepared to mislead the parliament with inaccurate data. That's serious. That's the country in which we operate in. I am happy that I can be unapologetic about it. And Dr. Friday is here because I challenged the Prime Minister in the Parliament on the Petro-Carib money. I said so on Nice Radio, and I said so on every program I spoke in the last general elections, that if the ULP had lost the election, they could have been charged for misbehavior in public office for unlawfully spending nation's money. He never was able to take me to court once. The first thing he did after the election was to come to the parliament to correct it retroactively. And I'm speaking about expending over $100 and something million of monies, millions of dollars. So this is not an administration that can put their hands in the air, lily white, and claim that they are above board in the way that they spend the nation's money. A lot needs to be spoken to. Now, I go to the 2010. Remember where I started today? 2004 and 5. I take up the 2010 audit report because I want people to see this is not fabrication. This is what the directive audit says. Because of the significance of the matters described and comments made otherwise in this report, I am of the opinion that the financial statements presented for audit did not in all material respects fairly represent the financial position of the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines as at the 31st December 2009 and 31st December 2010. And I make in my own pen notes verification of accountability argument, but more so professional compromise in the way we do business in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So, 6 years after this had been pointed out, no correction in the way we are doing the nation's business. I come to 2011. 2011. And I'll speed up a little bit because I have to make allowance for my distinguished leader to address. And page 9 of that report speaks to special warrants. Special warrants is when, if government, something pop up they didn't budget for, you could go and spend money, but you have to come back to the parliament to satisfy it. Since 2015 elections, in 2008, we haven't had a single supplementary bill brought to the Parliament to account for money spent in 2014, 15, 16, 17, and 18 without the Parliament's approval. So government is in breach of the appropriate sections of the law that I do not want to detail you with at this time. Some help again with the stand of the microphone, please, because I'm taking my time to walk you through this exercise. So, continuing, thank you, Mr. Blackson. I don't think they'll know who you are by that. You might just blow a whistle. Continue with my evidence-based approach. I go to the most recent Directive Audit Report that's at our disposal. Again, Sister Kick touched on it because we exchange notes, you know what I mean? In the 2012 report, because I want you to show in, boy, some serious things happening in St. Vincent that we don't have time. Page 35 of the report. This one really is amusing. The Director of Audit said the capital revenue for that year was $286 million to finance capital expenditure. Hear this, you know, because you have to read this thing slowly to make sense. I'm sorry I have to say this in the international community, but they deserve the beating. The capital revenue estimated at $286 million to finance capital revenue of $184 million, and to realize a surplus of $101 million. Now, if you have a house to build that costs you $184 million, you can go and raise 286. You raise what you need. You need 184, you go and you look for 184. But they're telling us it was estimated at 286. But you only going to spend 184. But he taking 100, the other 100, to help on the recurrent side. So he call this gun genomics. But here what the Director of Audit says, it's a joke, so you really had to laugh. The initial budget was increased by another $3 million. But she says, consequently, the projected surplus was reduced to $98 million. This is what should be a surplus, you know. She says, however, the financial statement shows a surplus of $53 million over the actual revenue of $107. I know that don't make sense to you a little bit, but I'm going to read it through that you understand. In short, they were supposed to raise 184 to spend in the capital aid. In the end, they said the statement showed that actual capital revenue of $107 million was realized. So of the 184 they were to have, they only got 107. So forget about the 100 spay that they wanted us to put over there to help. They reached it. They short by the 184 because they only get 107. But this is what I find interesting, you know. She says, the 5 sources of actual capital revenue were less than the amounts estimated as shown in the table. Now here, what is interesting about the table? Under grants, the government got $61 million. External loans, they raised 44. No, sorry. No, they said they would get 61, they actually got 26. They said they would borrow 44 overseas, they only borrowed 16. They was to raise 59 locally, well, they raised the 59. Local revenue, they said they would have got 20, they only got 5. But this is the beautiful one. They were supposed to get other receipts of $100 million. This is not for the original thing, you know. They raised 0. They even get halfpenny as we used to say in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. That is 2012. they didn't raise half of the 100 million. This year in 2018, they put back in that same figure, but they carried it to $160 million. $160 million. Knowing full well they will not raise it. Now, this is what I find, and I have 3 lawyers here, they're going to defend me if I'm in trouble. This is what I find to be criminal in the exercise. Is that if you look at the records of performance of the administration over the period of time, the last 10, 15 years, they have been close to $2 billion short of what they should have raised to do the capital things for St. Vincent and the Grenadines. But you may want to forgive them to say, well, that's only a judgment call and estimate. But I'm putting it to you here tonight and to my dear ULP friends, that even on the recurrent side, that is what is supposed to pay to run the hospital, the schools, the police, social services, transfers for tourism, and so on and so forth. Every single year, government balances the book by spending 10% less than they put on paper. That amounts to a shortfall of over $500 million over the last 15 years. That has not been spent. Now, why am I taking the point to go through all these financial statistics? I am of the view, at this stage, that the crime and the violence that we are witnessing in St. Vincent and the Grenadines is not coincidental or incidental or by chance. What obtains in St. Vincent today is that a new subculture has emerged, partially out of the fear spoken about by Sister Baptise, but more directly as a consequence of the extent of hopelessness, despair, disbelief, distrust in what obtains. Too many of our people, young men in particular, have come to the conclusion, I am not going to go through what my brother and sister went through with it 9, 10 CXCs and can't get a job for the last 5, 6, 10 years and have to be begging, scrunting, prostituting, or turning to alternative lifestyles. I am not going to allow my mother to suffer one more day with the indignity of not being able to wear a new dress or feed my younger brother. Or for some men, I can't tolerate the fact that I've lost my woman to a van driver or somebody else who has greater access to cash and I'm belittled in the way that I have to be living. And you know what? This is what I want you to listen to me, you know. They say, me and the problems with you know NDP. But I can't wait. I can't wait for you to solve my problems of hunger, of unhappiness, of a no future. Let me try a shortcut. That shortcut includes, let me eat a food. That shortcut includes, give me now, I'll pay the price. And I hear that. I hear that sometimes in a frightening way, going through St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I hear young men say, if you give me $50 now, let me go bust a shop. And I hear this, and they've turned it around and said that I said so when I did so. But if a guy say, if I had the money, I'd buy 2 bullets, and this is what I do and what I wouldn't do. Recently, I had to take a very strong and risky decision to go to the Commissioner of Police and in his absence speak to the deputy to save a person from what would have been certain death. Because I have had the experience of a young man who had witnessed a crime from the Green Hill community, very close, strong supporters of mine, and they irresponsibly allowed that young man to give evidence in the courts in a murder trial. Well, quite naturally, you were wiped out by the bridge down in Bottomtown. And clearly, if I had allowed this young person to go and do the same thing, within days, she too would have been wiped out. Now that's where we reach. When you have a country in which murderers cannot be brought to justice because nobody see, nobody tell, it means that the justice system has also collapsed. It has collapsed. We are at that stage in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And much of it has to do with the inability of the administration to take care of its citizens. Now, I started this evening's presentation with examples of picking from the low-hanging branches. Among those that he spoke about, we have what we call the Patel proposal, where he said that, look, we'll pay the CXC fees for all students right in CSEC. That's a lot of weight taken off of parents with schools going to the secondary schools. We had the Terence Olivier proposal to build a hostel on mainland St. Vincent and the Grenadines so that parents can feel comfortable that their children is under the protection of some responsible persons at that hostel and not being ill-treated or getting pregnant or things happening to them. And we have a set of other strong and firm proposals. But listen to this. Listen to this. And we allow a person, because they may be glib, have the gift of gab, can use the intellect and manipulate the state machinery as no administration has ever done to get away with murder. St. Kitts and Nevis, which had a debt to GDP ratio of 120-something% just a few years ago, last week announced that they have reduced their ratio to 60%. The governor of the Central Bank of the OECS, in concert with finance ministers of OECS, had agreed that that is a target we would achieve in 2030. And St. Kitts has achieved it 12 years ahead of time. Because St. Kitts, which is managed properly, this one in the background of finance and accounting, like myself, if I may take a little boast of bragging right, is going down the same road as Grenada, whose economy is so far ahead of us, and St. Lucia, whose economy is also so far ahead of us, and Dominica, to whom we loaned money and has overtaken us and gone so far ahead of us, and Antigua, that is light years ahead of us, have all, every last one of them have seen the need to make use of legislation in their Citizens by Investment program that brings in at least $500 million a year to their economy and take the taxpayers off the backs of the people. But we in St. Vincent want to go the other way, from 15% VAT to 16% today, and introduce property tax, and it will more to be 17 and 18 and 19 and 20. And Labour loves you. Keep the camera there. If we had taken the Eustace recommendation and had not been driven into fear over 10 years ago, we would have been $2-3 billion richer today. But not just richer today. We would have also been able to realize that which is fundamental for the advancement and development of society. In another forum, I always draw reference to the fact coming out of my Asian experience, I'm with a colleague, owner of the hair only firm, who said his father always preferred Mencius over, what's the other great philosopher, Chinese philosopher again? Mencius and Confucius. Come on now, come on, you're all sleeping on me. You nearly make Ralph have one of me going back home. And basically he was making the point that a country's development begins with the individual. If every individual in the society is better off, then automatically the country is better off. The reverse is not true. If you take a state approach, it may fail you miserably. And we have the classic case. In fact, we have two classic cases. The one Israel referred to, the New Democratic Party, in its most successful social program ever, the land reform program, financed by the European Union, of $82 million, transformed lives and created a new middle class and taxpayers class in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, in Lauders, Lomans, Greggs, and further afield with $82 million. The children became doctors, lawyers, engineers, accountants, sociologists, all the disciplines. We have spent over $1.5 billion on an airport, which sometimes I have a disagreement with my own party, because you always say majors talk too much, but if it's wrong, it's wrong, and if it's right, it's right. I will stay a supporter of the airport, because it's a good, but we haven't done enough work yet. But with $1.5 billion, people in Peruvianville have not been able to change the galvanize. Not a shop has opened in Stubbs. Nobody in Calder can say that they're better off for its existence. Where the money and development has gone. Because we have not integrated. I hope nobody's embarrassed. But because this is how I live. This is also how I speak. I recall going to a particular part of my constituency on occasion. Every Friday, I close down my constituency. I close it down. I don't go home unless I go to 2, 3, 4, 5 places to make sure all is well. And when I go into a shop, I say, guy, we need 3 Guinness. The guy said, you're going by the next house? I said, yes. He said, go ahead, when you come back here and get it. I spend a little further, faster than he think. When I come, I see a little boy running, coming up the road with 3 Guinness. The shopkeeper said, buy 3 Guinness to sell me 3 Guinness, you know. I ain't telling you no lie. This is a fact. Almost every week now I go. They call a name. Almost every week you go now. You can hardly find a shop that can sell you 3 rounds of Guinness. If you want to measure how bad an economy is, simple things, you know. Look at the amount of Guinness and Hiram bottles you'll find on the floor for 30 cents. No shopkeeper will buy an empty bottle for you for 30 cents because he don't know when he will sell a Guinness to get back 30 cents. Straight economics. Sometimes I cross the boundary into Daniel's constituency because there's one of his constituencies who gives me a lot of support. In fact, I wish I had her by a shop. I believe I could call her name. Miss James, good evening. I'm sure you're listening. And if I'm there 6:30, and the people begin to come in, she said, watch how the business change. As they come, 1 candle, Miss James. 2 candle, Miss James. You probably have to take about a dozen people before you find a person will buy a pack of candle. People live in 1 night at a time, sweet Jesus. So when we come to this notion that all is well, it's not well in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. It is not well. And you here in the diaspora needs to help us and help Dr. Friday to turn this thing on its head. As I like to say, not, and E.G. used to put it even better than me, not because a cat had a kitten in the oven, you can call them bread. You understand? And if, therefore, you came to me and asked me to sell you 5 pounds of beef, I may well with 1 cut give you the beef. It may take 2, it may take 3. and I may give you the £5. But that don't make me a butcher. If I was a butcher, when you came for the beef, I'd ask you what you need the beef for. You need it for pot roast, you need it for stew, you need it for this, you need it for that. That's a butcher thinks differently. We don't have a single soul on the other side who understands and thinks the fundamentals of economics. And the evidence is that when God bless a soul, the late economist Sims Martin retired from the public service. And Arnhem used to say Sims is his mentor, you know, and Arnhem bright like a light bulb in economics. And he said he used to look up to Sims for guidance. But when Sims leave as economic advisor, Ralph hired Gerald Thompson, a doctor. I'm not making it up. So what do you expect? And there we are today, hoping that through marijuana will turn around the economy of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Who the lead spokesman for the marijuana? Dr. Thompson. You know, he's been advised. I must have said, on this one, I have to say he's taking medical advice. I can't be so, you know. So the truth of the matter, we're in trouble. We are in serious trouble. And you can summarize all that I've said. That the country needs new leadership to give us this one nation, this one people, this one Vincent. And that leadership and that team can only be found in the New Democratic Party. The leader of the party, who has my support, and I gave him a hard run the other day, no. No, you understand? He didn't feel how to go down Shatter to walk the tongue. But when look at there. When I said the person he walked in the morning and them, they said, what major you get that strength from? And then I walked all the way from Georgetown, from the Dry River to Kingston. You know what's the message? Fit for government. Fitter by far. Fitter for policies. And we have the fittest Prime Minister in Dr. Friday. Thank you. God bless you. Love you all.